Hey there, folks, it's the Rambling Collector once again, back with another long ramble for all of you. And believe me when I say, this one is going to be a lengthy one. Now, I was actually requested to do a ramble on this series for quite a while now, I think a few months back. And to be quite honest, I was all for it. Especially since I just started reading these books at the time. And a lot of fans of this series always say that the manga is better than the anime. I wasn't sure if that was just the manga purists talking or not. But after taking a dip into it, I can definitely see what the hell they were talking about. And I'll tell you this now, I rapidly got addicted to this series the more I read. So, today I'm going to talk about Tokyo Ghoul by Ishida. Needless to say, this has so far been one of the darkest ones that I've read, and yet one of the most badass and amazing story-wise. And today, I'm going to talk about it. So to start off with, I gotta be honest with you guys, when I first dove into this series years ago, it was through the anime, not the manga. And all in all, I did not know anything about the manga at the time, just the anime. And I honestly thoroughly enjoyed it. I dove through the first season and the second season, as well as season 3, part 1 and 2. And to be honest with you, I still thoroughly enjoy it to this day. I mean, it was one of the first ones I ever put into my collection DVD-wise. So it still holds a place in my heart as one of the first supernatural ones I ever saw. And in my personal tastes, I've always liked the more darker type of series. But the anime itself was very well done, with the color, the action, the animation was really good. Now, I could definitely see what they were saying about the story being very rushed. And looking back on it now, after reading the manga through part 1, I want to say, that is to say seasons 1 and 2 of the story, I can honestly see now that the anime is a very bare bones adaptation. What I mean by that is that there's no real meat to the series. It's very bare bones with all the minimal details that are required, such as introducing the characters, some of the action, some of the major events that occur in this series. But the manga definitely gave me a more fleshed out story compared to the anime, though I can kind of see where the problem is. They probably had to rush through a lot of details, especially on such a limited time. I mean, 12 episodes is not enough to cover at the most 7 volumes without skipping a few major details, or even just minor details that would have made the experience all the better. But I will give credit where credit is due, and the anime itself is still very well done, despite the fact that it is a very bare bones adaptation of the manga. Now, let's get to the real meat of this. So I've got to be honest here with this one. I was not prepared for just how gruesome and yet amazing Tokyo Ghoul's art style would be in the manga. I was not prepared at all. It's one thing to see it on screen in the anime, but it's another when it's uncensored on the printed page. And just wow. Just looking at some of these images here, it really shows the unique way of the contrasting shades of black and white, and it really accents the nature of this manga. It's not a happy story. It is a very dark and very gruesome story that will have you hooked for more despite the gore of it all. And that, I believe, is one of its greatest strengths. The art style really captivates that sense of color without, well, major color, just black and white. But just the various shades really help to make it stand out and pop, in my personal opinion. And it really highlights the gruesome nature of this series. Now, I'm not even kidding when I tell you guys, at one point with this manga, I was literally going through a book a day trying to finish this series, and because I was always hungry for more. I was fascinated, and I really wanted to see how this story played out, and more importantly, just to see more of this amazing art style. And I'll tell you now, the story with this manga was way better done. It stretches out the story more, fills in a lot of details, and it really accents more of the horror style of this series. Because I will tell you right now, the anime does have a few spooky moments, but a lot of the gruesomeness of the series was censored out. And I mean, this series is gruesome. And Jesus Christ, I was not prepared for any of this. But I was more than excited to see more, especially when it was uncensored and not blocked by TV standards. Because, and more importantly, the story throughout Part 1, that is to say, volumes 1 through 14 of Tokyo Ghoul, I have not done Part 2 yet. I will, though, in the future. I just wanted to talk about Part 1 first. But now, moving on to more important matters, just from looking at this art style, you can tell that it really adds more character to the story. And to be quite honest, I am definitely looking forward to seeing more in Part 2 of this series. Especially if I get to see more of this gruesome violence. Like just the story of how Kaneki goes off on his own really shows more of his character, as well as highlights more of the positive aspects of the series that were really missed out on in the anime. But now to move on. Now for the really juicy topic of this ramble, I absolutely loved all the characters and how much more in-depth they were here in the manga than the anime. For instance, Kaneki's character really shines out more in this series throughout Part 1 than he did in both parts. We see more of his thought processes in the manga and just how much of a tortured soul he really is. And his journey throughout the second part, from volumes 7 to 14 of the manga, really highlights more of his character and more of that struggle that he has to both accept his ghoul side as well as trying to go out on his own, as well as finding out why he specifically was made into a half ghoul. But now other characters that are really given more depth here were definitely Juzo, Tsukiyama, Toka, Jason, Uta, Amon, and Rise. For instance, it is shown that Rise is alive in the second half of Part 1, and damn, the way that she ends up, just wow. The fact that she's reduced to a test tube, literally spawning more one-eyed ghouls daily, is dark as hell. The fact that it's more confirmed in Part 1 that she's still alive and has broken out of her imprisonment and left in kind of this feral, mindless state near the end of Part 1 is hauntingly chilling, and yet a fate that she kind of deserves. Now Tsukiyama, though, he definitely scared me a bit more in this manga than he does in the anime. The anime just kind of makes him a little creepy, and in my opinion a bit kind of gay for Kaneki. I don't know about that, honestly, but anyways. But the way he's introduced in the manga was far more, I want to say, what's the word here I'm looking for? Okay, let's go with creepy here. His introduction in the manga was far creepier than it was in the anime. The anime, he just pops up in the coffee shop like, hey, what's up, guys? And we have no idea of just how much of a messed up character he is. Unlike in the manga, where he's first introduced taking the eyes out of a female victim, literally plucking out her eyeballs, leaving her wandering around with two holes where her eyes formerly were, and then having them sauteed on a freaking dinner plate later on, and I'm just like, damn, that's fucked up. Now Jason, though. So his torture of Kaneki was definitely glossed over in the anime. Like in the manga, it is far more brutal to behold. you see at one point how Kaneki's toes are growing back after they've been chopped off, and I'm just like, wow, this is way more brutal than I thought. And you see the way it's shown in the imagery of Kaneki just kind of losing his head the more he's being tortured by Jason. And Jason by far now scares me. He is a messed up character. At one point, just to stave off his aggression, because he was almost about to kill Kaneki, he literally thrusts his hand through this one guy's entire body. And I'm just left with a shocked look like, say what? And then this ghoul just gets back up again after getting impaled through the stomach. And Jason just walks off like, that's an everyday occurrence. I'm just like, well then, that's fucked up. Now, Juzo here really shines out more in the manga than the anime. The anime, he just kind of shows up. But we get far more of his backstory throughout the series in the manga. Such as, for instance, we see more of his past as he was raised by ghouls, growing up in practically a massacre arena where it's fight or die. And I honestly felt kind of sorry for him. Because growing up in that kind of environment was definitely not good for his sanity. And you can tell just how detached and amoral he is. Like, he doesn't care about lives lost or anything like that. He just cares more about taking down ghouls, getting his Queen K, and just moving on. Slaughter as many ghouls as he can. He was kind of a wild card, pull the trigger and watch him go kind of character. But all the same, it made him far more fascinating to read more of his story in the manga, and I ended up pitying the guy. I really did. Toka also gets a lot more chances to shine. Her character really pulls through, especially throughout the first half of part 1, where it's shown that she's actually training Kaneki in how to fight. And it definitely helped to improve her character a lot, in my opinion. Instead of just making her this kind of tsundere character in the anime like they did, it gives her more depth as I was reading it through the manga. Now, Uta definitely surprised me when I heard about his character. In case you're wondering who the hell Uta is, he's the guy holding the mask in the bottom here. I actually wasn't expecting to get some of his backstory, but man, was I glad I did. It definitely helps him out more as a character. And it really shines out with a lot of these secondary characters who were kind of glossed over in the anime, and it gives them more of a chance to shine throughout the manga, as well as highlighting just how much of a tragic and yet messed up world Tokyo Ghoul is. All in all, I'd say the manga definitely wins when it comes to characterization, as well as giving more meat and backstory to a lot of these characters. So all in all, I'll give a win to the fans on this one, because there was such a massive debate throughout the Tokyo Ghoul fandom that the manga is better than the anime. And at first, I would just kind of see these and kind of gloss over it at first, but now, after having read Part 1's manga, I can definitely give a win here to the fans, that they knew what the heck they were talking about, after seeing how much more in-depth the manga is. However, the anime will still hold a spot in my heart, simply because it was one of the first animes I ever saw. It was the one I stuck with the longest, all the way to the end, and I felt bitter afterwards seeing how it ends. And I'll feel the same way after finishing Part 2 in the manga. All in all, I'll still give the anime wins when it comes to the style, the animation, the color of it, as well as really good action scenes. But the manga definitely wins when it comes to telling the story much more, how do I put it, much more in depth of a story. Now, I feel like if they did go back and redo this anime, instead of making it 12 episode seasons, they should pull like 16 episodes per season to really give us a chance to see more of the minor details that are introduced throughout the manga. It really helps to add more meat to this franchise, at least to the anime wise. But all in all, I will say that the manga does outshine the anime in this regard. So my overall score at the end of the day for Tokyo Ghoul Part 1 is definitely an 11 out of 10. Simply put, for a really good story, much more in-depth characters, great action, as well as a really addictive way to get people gripped into this story. All in all, I'd highly recommend checking out the manga, at the very least, before seeing the anime, just to kind of see the major differences between the two. Now, some other manga or series I would recommend that are similar to Tokyo Ghoul would definitely be Hellsing by Kota Hirano and Angels of Death. Both also have a really good, more graphic art style and much more darker story, same as Tokyo Ghoul. And especially if you really want more of the horror style genre when it comes to anime and manga. But anyways, thank you all for listening. Hope you have a good day. This is Rambling Collector, signing off.